Hi, everyone. Good morning, good afternoon. Thanks for joining. Mikhail Stefuka here, and together with Stefan, we'll walk you through the updates for automation and customization in 2024.1. What did we prepare for you? I'll start with the HyperMesh client Python API updates. So new stuff, fixes, anything that is relevant and should be on your radar. I will then proceed with Task Manager and the new features that we introduced there. And after that, I will pass it on to Stefan, who will guide us through new classes in HyperView and HyperGraph. And time should permit us to also do a bit of a live demo. Let me jump straight to the first topic, which is HyperMesh client Python API. Now, since the Python API layer is still relatively fresh, as you know, we introduced it in the previous release in 2024.0. I want to keep you all posted on the coverage, really, on the development of how close we are to, let's say, the capabilities of the original TCL layer. So in 2024.0, the numbers look like this. If we split and, or in other words, if you focus on the main HyperMesh functions and then split them into modify and query groups, as we know them, we're roughly on 97, 96%. We pushed the dials a bit further in the .1 release. So we introduced 40 new functions on the left-hand side, and then 10 extra functions, extra query functions. So as you can see, we're approaching the 100% mark. Hopefully in the next release, fingers crossed, we will be there. We have still a few things lined up for the next release. Beside the coverage, which hopefully meets your expectations at this point, we also addressed the behavior with errors. So this is another thing I wanted to bring up today. In 2024.0, if you run a command, here I'm using my favorite translate mark example, and if you run it incorrectly, so here I put a 0 value for the magnitude. So this triggers an error in core, but you see in the console, there's no sort of Python error. So if you put something like this in your script, you run the script, the code would proceed. No errors would be actually triggered. So in 2024.0, as a user, what you need to do is either check the message. As you can see, it says the distance should be a non-zero value, or more importantly, you check the value of the status. If it's non-zero, which is pushed from the C++ code, that gives you an indication that an error actually was triggered. Of course, this is not an ideal behavior from the user's perspective. For example, if we compare it to HyperView or HyperGraph functions and methods, there we trigger a proper Python error. So we really wanted to bring the same behavior to HyperMesh client as well. That means in 2024.1, if you execute the same code, you will get a proper Python error. That also means that you can follow the usual sort of construct in Python and use the try except a method to catch errors and work with the code in a, I guess, more transparent way. So we believe that this will be seen as a big benefit. Moving on, there are a handful of things that I cherry-picked and wanted to show today in terms of the improvements on the Python API layer. So let's have a look at them one by one. First of all, I wanted to mention the implicit conversion. If you have used Python API in version 2024.0, you will be familiar with this concept, but let me introduce it to everyone so we are all on the same page. The implicit conversion mechanism, as we refer to it, basically allows you to use native Python data types instead of the HyperMesh ones. In other words, HyperMesh functions, as they are exposed in Python, they use various different types of data types. They are native to HyperMesh, and they're there for a very good reason. If you look at the signature of different functions, here we've got an example of a rigid method function, which takes a HW bool list. Okay, it's a native type for HyperMesh. User can directly create it with the corresponding class constructor, but we felt that really the most natural way for users to work with the API would be to create just standard Python lists. Right? If I have a list of Boolean values, I just want to use a Python list. If I have a string, it's a string in Python, right? So why should I, as a user, have to create a HW string specifically? So this is what we do in the background. Although the command wants a HW bool list, as a user, you can treat it as a simple Python list of Boolean values, and we do the conversion behind the scenes for you. So this is big, has a big implication on the usability of the API. And in 2024.1, we have extended this implicit conversion to support all the types that are highlighted in bold on this slide. So entity list 2, the two-dimensional list, double list, 2D and bool list, int list, etc., etc. Another point I wanted to raise is performance. This is, of course, on top of our sort of priority list consistently, never moves away from it. But there are other dependencies. We have a few more things lined up in Works, so the performance will be getting better as we move forward. But just a little snippet here of one specific thing we improved between 2024.0 and .1, and that is a creation of collection based on the search string defining an ID range. You've got a little comparison here with a model where we specify the range between 1 and 200,000. So the timing went down from roughly just over 1.9 seconds to close to 1 second. But as I said, we'll continuously work on this and make sure that the performance is exactly where users need it. In general, we also introduce a lot of fixes there. We touch more than 30 individual functions and improve their behavior or corrected their behavior. As I said, it's still a very fresh layer that we are continuously trying to improve. And the entity class constructor had a few little things that we wanted to address. There were issues with IDs and name arguments. Namely, if you specify a non-existing ID or if you specified a name that was matching the default name that HyperMesh uses for newly created entities, you could see some little things that prevented you from creating the entity, so those were fixed. And one thing we had lined up for the next releases is also support more than the integer, float, and string arguments in the constructor. So we would like to expand this and also support other data types. The load classes in Python, if you use the layer a bit, you will notice that individual types of loads, moments, forces, pressures, they're split into their own classes. And the creation of collection for these classes was not correctly capturing the nature of it. So that's something we have cleared, and this was affecting the collection by displayed and the interactive selection. So when the user actually clicks on entities, so we are now correctly filtering the appropriate entities based on the class provided by the user. And last but not least, this was actually a request from a customer. You can use sort of in-place collections. Hopefully the little snippet on the screen is big enough so you can read the code. Normally, previously in 2024, you had to create the collection beforehand and then iterate over its object essentially. Now you can use it essentially on the fly. You can just use the constructor there and construct your loop that way. And last topic here, entity attributes. So this is hugely important. It's essentially all the information that an entity in HyperMesh carries with it and with itself, and provides all the necessary information to the user to work with it and also not just query it, but define these aspects in the first place. We have around just over 200, I think, entity types. And then if you multiply it by the hundreds of data types or data names that they carry, you end up with a list of thousands. So again, similar to performance, probably we're continuously improving these and making sure that the infrastructure covers and supports all of them. The biggest change, or the big changes in 2024.1, have been that we now support the editable and invisible attributes. In other words, those are the ones that you can edit, but you don't see in the entity editor. Okay. Until this point in version 2024, we were fully in sync with the entity editor. So what was visible in EE was also accessible through the Python layer, but nothing more was there. So this is one limitation that we removed, and also we now support tabular attributes. And the last point I want to make with respect to HyperMesh API is the documentation. and support. So we know we still owe you full documentation of the HyperMesh functions. At the moment, the documentation covers all aspects of it, except the actual individual functions. There we are directing you to TCL documentation. So that's something that is in the works, and we are hoping that we'll be able to bring this to you very, very shortly. Similar to the other API layer we've got, we would like to introduce a specific programmer's guide for Python, where we'll keep you posted in a very detailed way on the changes to the layer, changes in to individual commands, making sure that with every version, as a scripter, you are prepared for any changes, you are aware of anything that could potentially affect your existing code, and also all the new things that you can take advantage of. Last but not least, please keep an eye on the Altair community. Okay, post the questions there, create scripts. Do get in touch with us through the community. We are keeping an eye on it, and would be very, very happy to help you through that channel. And that's HyperMesh Python API in .1. Next topic from myself, the Task Manager. Task Manager was introduced in 2024.0, and it is our tool to allow you to build processes based off Python coded logic and kind of dressed up through XML files into nice task-based processes. What we introduced in 2024.1 is a process editor. In other words, all the XMLs that you until now had to create manually, write them in a text editor, you can now construct them interactively through this editor. Lets you define the main structure, lets you define the various aspects. Essentially, you can also build your GUIs, right, by creating a list of widgets that should appear in the task dialog. And you can then link these widgets, or in other words, all the callback commands for every item in your process to the Python functions that live in your Python code. If time permits, I will very briefly show you how it looks, but just in case you have access only to the slides after the webinar, here is a quick snapshot of it, of the XML editor. So very, very simple, clean GUI. The top section shows you the process itself and everything that it includes. On the bottom left corner, you've got the entity editor. And on the bottom right-hand side, you've got the sort of function viewer, where you can choose which function from the loaded Python file you want to link or hook up to your process logic. So this is the biggest highlight of 2024.1 with respect to Task Manager. We also introduced a few little improvements. The notable ones, you will see there are 2 new columns available. By default, they are hidden. If you click on right-click on the header, you will be able to activate the run and the active column. And what you see on the other part of the screenshot is collapsible categories. So previously, those categories were sort of just static, but in order to improve the usability of the GUI, they are now by default collapsible, so users can collapse them. And with that, since I do have a couple of minutes, let me jump to HyperWorks and very quickly show you the XML editor live. Okay, here we go. Hopefully the screen is still being shown. For those of you who are new to the developer ribbon, let me show you. By default, we keep it hidden, but you can enable it through the ribbons menu, developer. And at the moment, we have the task manager here, and more things will be coming. So keep an eye on this space. Task manager, and then the new icon, little satellite that pops up as soon as you hover above the icon. And that's the guy that opens the XML editor. Very, very briefly, let me just resize things slightly and then bring up one of the examples that we've got in the installation, by the way. So this is something you do have access to as soon as we install HyperWorks. Right, so what it shows you is the individual categories, tasks, and most importantly, the properties. Okay. Here in the entity editor, we can see all the aspects of it. And if I load something quickly here, we've got the list of functions that are available in this file, and then I can sort of paste them into the individual command definitions. What you will notice, we have different levels of modules here. So you can specify, depending on where your file sits relatively to the sort of top node of your process, how much of the essentially folder names you want to include in your name. So if I go with, I don't know, 2, and then as a very example, we'll just define the renumber as a validate command, let's say, okay? So you can see it goes up level, actions, and up another level, tools. Hopefully with this, it will really speed up the process of creating your processes, your tasks, definitions, right? And yeah, you'll be able to do the job quicker. All right, that's all from my side. I will now pass it over to you, Stefan. So thank you, everyone.
Okay, perfect. I will show you now the news in the new features in HyperView and HyperGraph Python and HWC for 2024.1. So let's start with an overview of how HyperView. Here you will see, compared to the legacy TCL API, all what was covered in 2024 and 2023.1. Now, the new stuff, we will see it's the measure, it's a really big one, and the system will be covered. In additionally, also some framework stuff on the session level, like capture tools. So let's look into the details. Let's start with systems. So the new system class was added. All system types are supported. So we have here a system type, rectangular, fixed can be chosen, cylindrical, spherical. So when all orientation methods are supported. So this is here orientation by node. It can be used for each of them. So it's not linked to one of them. By coordinates here, where you get the origin, etc. as tuples of where the coordinates, or the circle center. Again, here you can provide the node objects to do it, and many more. I quickly want to go here to the help. When I go to the HyperView help module here and go to the system class, you will see that we got here the set orientation, circle center, and all the options. But you can also set vector components, set orientation by list with the full transformation matrix with a 9, or only vectors, or only even components of the vectors without querying and resetting the whole list. So that is very helpful. Now I go to the demo. When I run it here, the system, you see it will be created, the code will be executed. I use an extension. I want to quickly a few words about this extension. Is here with the extension main XML and all the subfolders with the infos. So I have here a manual directory, for example, for system. If you run this script, this is without any definitions or so. If you want to run the demo and see the objects, and then all the objects and nodes, etc., see the properties, modify it easily. This you can be used if you want to see the code, which is run as a module from the ribbon XML icon. Then, for example, here you will see its definition. It can be run by itself, of course, just sourcing the script, but then you will not have all the objects available. So just, yeah. Okay, so that was the system part. Now let's go to measures. Measures was the biggest one here for HyperView or for 2024.1. We have introduced 16 classes because they are all different. Static and dynamic min-max. Then here the measure position, the one I highlight here, I go into detail with live demos and the code presentation. We have all the distance measures. I will go in specially about the distance minimum, which is the most complex one. Then angle between, they depend on sorted lists of entities. And of course, we have all the other classes, which you can see also from the graphical side. Let's start with based on single entities with the example of measure position. We support here both object list or a collection. So you can provide here, when you say add entities, a collection with nodes here, or I can provide a node list. The node list allows you that the the measures inside the measure group are sorted. If you provide a collection, it will be sorted dictionary. We also, I want to mention, have the get measure properties method on all the measures. So here you see in this dictionary, you see if the properties key shows you basically the header line, what is inside, model, part pool, etc. And then you get the IDs in string format because these are the keys, and each key here contains the list according to the properties for each measure. You see it's the first one is the model, the pool, etc. And at the end, the last entity is always a list of the results. Here, X, Y, Z. Okay, so let's go and run this one and measure position. See, model is loaded and this code is executed. And I also put here again the property dictionary here, push it. So clear for the next one. Okay, let's go to measures with multiple entities. Here I make it a little bit simple, so I show only one in the measure group, angle between. Again, we have the object list. It has to be sorted, so no collection support here. And I add the object list. I get all the display properties here, so magnitude and the projection. And when I run the get measure property, I see again all what's content. And here I have only one. The key consists of all the three entity IDs, and then I see the values, and at the last of the list is then the display projection, X, Y, Z, and the magnitude. Can quickly run this script. This is measure angle between, model is loaded, and you will see here the last are the results and all the other properties if you want to know. Okay. So let's continue with the most complex one here, the measure with multiple collections, the distance minimum. We support here collections of type part, element, and node. So here in this demo, you see I create a collection 1 of type node, and I add by part, so all the node IDs of part 3. The second one I use of part, and then with the name, mountain bracket, I add it here. This one to the collection, all the display options are supported, and again, all the measure properties here when you run it will be shown. When I run the demo, yeah, you will see I quickly measure minimum distance, model is loaded and displayed. When we have a quick look, you see stuff is hidden, etc., and highlighted and oriented. I want to quickly show you that when we have here the measure minimum distance, I create a system which is used here. And here, for example, I recorded in HWC the position that it looks nice and copy with one click, copy to Python. I demoed this last time. And then this is the code here. I have a third collection which I populate, and this collection will then be used to create another collection height with I set all the shade lines, loop over the visible entities, and change the shade lines. And I also hide all the parts which are not involved so that the demo looks nice. So just in case that you wonder, because the demo has much more code than you see here in the PowerPoint. Okay, let's continue with the video tool. This is video tool class that was asked for by many. So we support here video type AVI, AMF, and GIF in the normal way. You know, you see here, these are the one file output, for example. If you capture video in image format like JPEG, PNG, BMP, or GIF, it will create all the images per time step, you know, labeled in a way that you can easily throw the whole content to a tool like ImageMagick and do your own formatting. That is also what we provide. So we support both here. Support of all dimensions, window area, and full page export. Here I create a capture video tool. I set the dimension to pixels and want to capture the whole page area, and then set the width and the height by pixels. Then when I set a file name, and then with capture I can execute. I can switch to another page and then just capture with a different name. So all the settings are kept. This one, the second video capture tool, captures a special area out of the image. And yeah, so when we look here, I show here in the extension there's the export directory. This is empty for now. If I run the live demo, please have a look when we show here clear. Have a look at the status bar on the lower right, or here what the puts came out. When I say capture video, the model is loaded, and you will see it starts recording animation. It's the AVI, the EMF is recorded, animated GIF. It will be created then in the background. Then JPEG, PNG, BMP, and TIFFs are exported. You see, all is done. So, and when I have a look at the code, you will see that from the capture tool, I create here simple files, and here I create a directory for each of the image types. When we look here, everything is exported here. I get the main video, and when I look inside, when I look at the properties, this one was made in 2000 to 3000 pixel, and the JPEG or PNG, they are recorded here, and they are captured in a smaller setting, so more zoomed in here, according to the settings of the API of the capture tool. So that finishes the HyperView part. Now let's go to HyperGraph. Here in HyperGraph, you see the coverage. We had already good coverage in 2024 and 2023.1. So we added a lot of stuff here. So we added polar, full support for polar plots, so plotting and the polar curve class. We added the complex plotting here in create curves by file. The new bar charts are completely supported with the curve bar and all the property setting on the window, you know, for the category handling. A lot of stuff. Let's go into the details. First, multiple subcases. We had multiple files in 2024.0. Now we have multiple subcases. We can loop over subcases. 2 more classes were created. Multiple subcases and create curves by subcase. This one, the multiple subcases can be used to create a dictionary subset, subcase set, and this can be used then by the create curves by subcase. All the prefix subcase, all the stuff is supported, and all the layout options, you know, like 1 plot per component, 1 plot per request, etc., and the layout version are added. You see here, I use in this demo the subcase list, which I used from the data file. Querying the channel info, I use subcase 0 to subcase 2 and with a hyphen symbol. So some people have a lot of subcases. So if you want subcase 100 to 200, you don't have to provide it in a named list. You can just say this 100 and 200 with a hyphen symbol and do it. Okay. So, and of course, the subcase set can be exported as dictionary. Let's run the demo. So multiple subcases, it's loaded, and all the pages are created. You see here the first 3 subcases, etc. Great. So now let's go to complex plots. Complex plots, we already supported the complex curves. Now we can create curves by file with complex plots. This covers the full functionality of the create curves by file option. So for this, if you want to plot, you want to see what is the channel info, especially the component name is different between XY and complex. So the data file has now, when you get the component list from the data file, you can use format complex, And when you create curves by file, has a chart type attribute, which is by default XY. You can set it to complex. And of course, of this, all the layout type and organizations are supported. Let's run it. So if you see here from this code, it creates the pages. We have a trimmed down version, so we get only 4 at the end, but the chart type is 3 per window, etc. You see here for the 1 plot per component, we had 2 to the end, so that is all covered here nicely. Now, for polar curves, we had a new curve polar class. Be aware, so on the window side, we can type polar, and also we can set the polar mode, which is here on the left. Here you see phase versus magnitude. On the right is vector. The window class supports all the polar settings, special like quadrant color, background color, grid line color, etc. And if you want to delete a curve in a polar curve, of course, you can do it again like the window class with the window delete, and you can throw in the object list of the curve classes. Let's run it. So this is polar curves. Okay. And you see when you run, the left one is fixed, and the right one is of type vector, of mode vector, and yeah. Okay. The next thing is polar plots. Very fast. This is exactly the same like for complex now, create curves by file. Again, you can get the component list with the format of polar, and you can then support the chart type polar in the create curves by file option. And again, also all the layout settings are supported. Let's run the demo. This is polar plots. And you will see everything is loaded accordingly. A lot of work has been done to go into bar charts. Bar charts have no mass plotting, so here you have to use the curve bar class, and there are some specialities. Beside the base class properties like color, prefix, etc., you have only one dependent y vector, so no x vector for this curve, you know. And here you will see the window class supports the categories. So on the window level, if the window type is of type bar, you have all the bar functionalities. So bar category values you can get and set with a string array in one shot. You can get a dictionary. We introduced this so that you can get from this bar get values from on the window level. You see you get the category values with the list of strings of the categories, and then you get for each curve the value settings. And of course, we introduced a bar set category option. This is not available in core with the legacy APIs. It was much more complex. So we decided that you can give an index or a string which defines the place of the category, and you can just replace it if you provide a list from this place on to the right. Here, for example, you have 8 characters which replace from this index position in one shot. With you don't have to query, search in the list, etc. It's all done for you. The display options are all available here, like label stack cluster, etc. And again, deletion via window class. Let's run it. Yeah, so nicely created, and you see here, if you zoom in, yeah, you see here ABC, so replaced from the index specified on. Okay, then XY plot options also ask for. This is from the this is create curve options, a new class, and this will allow you to set the options here, the curve options when you plot. So multiple curve option set can be created. If you think about the GUI, you have one, you can set it, set the options and do it. Here you can create here, for example, curve options with, you give a special name, you set the properties here, expressions, etc. And then you set another one with a different name. And then you plot, create curves with all the settings you have done here with option 1 and with option 2. And you will see here these two here will show up. When I do it in the GUI, I say XY options. You see it's created. I got here 4 to 6 and here 1 to 3. Both are added, and you see here for the first one, you see the expression settings for the first, and here for the second. If I go here and you see here the different formulas as we have here. Please be aware when you now want to plot and you check the options, these are from the last loaded set. So, but you can easily override it. You can make your own, very simple, your own definitions and just click on it and use it as a preference, basically. So very powerful feature what development has provided us here. That closes HyperGraph, and now let's go to the HWC. HWC has only one slide, so performance improvement for long commands. What we had in the past was the handling of long commands was slow when the commands were super long. So for example, when you hide to a bunch of window selection elements, the commands can easily go in a few hundred kilobyte range. So if you have longer commands than 1,000 characters, it will show the trim version. And the recording will, of course, or copying for an HWC, TCL, or Python syntax will show the full thing. So you don't lose one. When you paste it into the command, a long command, it will be trimmed down immediately. So you cannot edit inside of this if you have this, if you see the 3 dots. I show a quick demo and load. Let's go to HWC clear. So when I hide here a bunch of elements, you see 50,000 elements, and say hide, for example, you see here this code. When I copy this one, copy to TCL or whatever, you know, I can quickly go in my temp. You will see that has now 13,000 characters. I can go here and say show, edit this one, copy the whole command and paste it into the command line. You see, it's immediately trimmed. You cannot edit here, but you can, when you execute it, it will be shown again, you know, the entities show up. When I copy again, it will be the full. If I have it logging, it will be also show in the log file with the full syntax. So that concludes. I hope you get a lot of information from it, and thank you for your attention.